Hey everyone, it's Nick, and today I'm going to review the sitcom Seinfeld that ran from 1989 to 1998, starring Jerry Seinfeld, Michael Richards, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, uh, Jason Alexander, Michael Richards, and then among others, there are some others too. I mean, they're the main ones, and then some others include Wayne Knight and Jerry Stiller. So anyway, this is definitely one of my favorite sitcoms out there. It's so hilarious, so it's also very influential. I mean, you still hear a lot of these terms on the show, like yada yada, and what's another one? Two-faced, man hands. What else? I mean, yeah, those are some of them. I mean, there's a lot of the other ones too. Those come off the top of my head, and then like yada yada. It's basically like you're telling a story and you gloss over certain details, like man got together with a woman, yada yada yada. They went back to the house and had sex, something like that. It's basically you're glossing over a lot of details, and then Two-Face is like a woman or man. They look good in one light, and then when you first see them, and then you see them later, and they look hideous in different lighting. Oh, and then also regifter, which is basically when someone gives you a gift, and then you just turn around and you give it to someone else. And then Indian Giver, I think that became popular at the show. And then anyway, I mean, those are some of the big ones. And of course, you have the characters like Jerry. He's basically pretty much like the straight man in the group. He has kind of like a Peter Pan complex, meaning he's immature. He acts like a kid, and he's tends to be critical of a lot of people. Like he tends to make sarcastic comments, like with George. There's an episode where he got this job over a place called Play Now. It's disabled person equipment. And one thing led to another, and he ended up getting a wheelchair. And then, his boss, ended up catching him. He had to get out of his wheelchair. It died. These people, the old people, canes and stuff, were chasing George. He upset them, and his boss caught him, and his boss got really angry and fired him. But George wouldn't leave. He had basically was in the contract, and rather than leaving, he basically still came to work despite how everyone there hated him. And, Jerry said to him, "You could take anything they could throw at you, except for actual work." And then, Kramer, I can make comments. My Kramer's a freeloader. He comes in, and one episode he overdid it on turkey. It didn't have the right mustard. This is bush. He just Jerry, hey, that's a half a pound of turkey. Kramer said, "You don't have Dijon mustard. It's no good." And Jerry said, "Yeah, I should keep more of your favorites on hand." And of course, there's George. He's a cheapskate. He's basically like a low-level sociopath. He's always looking for ways to get out of work and avoid actually doing any real labor. And then he hates spending any kind of money. He's very neurotic. He even is so cheap to the point where he bought these really inexpensive or really cheap wedding invitations that it's become pretty famous. Killed his fiance. She was licking all these envelopes, and after a while she passed out and died because it was so cheap. And it's like he didn't really even feel bad about it. He's like, oh well. And then he's had several different jobs. He tends to get fired because he is lazy. He does things inappropriate at work, like having sex with a maid on the desk, and they caught him. And I think the longest job he had in the show was he's working at the Yankee Stadium, and ironically he got hired. He was telling off George Steinbrenner, who's actually voiced by Larry David on the show. That's a voiceover. He was telling him off. I don't remember about what. He was telling him off something about baseball and calling him stupid or something. And then he said, hire this man. And he ends up, even though he's a really terrible employee there, George Steinbrenner doesn't even fire him. The only time he fires him is when he finds out George supports communism. That's what made them fire George. And then he gets another job at Kruger Industries, industrial smoothing. And the boss there is a bit of an idiot. He's oblivious to a lot. Like, he doesn't even realize the sign out front is missing the R, and it says Kruger, not Kruger. And George even broke into his office. He years ago in the show, it was a misunderstanding at the beach. He thought that Kruger's kids threw his the stereo boombox into the ocean. The boombox, they called it. No, it was his blankers. I think he threw their boombox. Out of spite, he threw their boombox into the ocean. And anyway, he had the picture in the office. He's afraid Kruger would fire him because he found out that he's the guy who threw their boombox into the ocean. So he breaks in his office. He steals the picture and tries to have it airbrushed, but he takes it to the wrong place. The guy he takes it to was an idiot. He screwed it up. He edited the wrong person out. He had to edit out Kruger. So George, he tries to have it redone. And this guy draws a cartoon. It ends up being like a cartoon picture of Kruger. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, Kruger is played by, I can't remember the guy's name. He played Colonel Spangler on Malcolm in the Middle, the military school, head of the military school. He was also hilarious in that show. I'll have to review that series too. So anyway, Kruger, being oblivious, like he doesn't really, like he's not playing with full deck. George, ends up admitting. He was telling George a story about the guy who threw the rocks in the ocean. He called him a pear-shaped loser. George said, "That pear-shaped loser was me." He said, "Well, I'll be. You've lost a lot of hair." And he said, "That's what they tell." Yeah, I know. I'm aware of that. Or yeah, I'm aware of that. Oh, and then there's another episode mentioned real quick, the car dealership episode where George is, he's waiting for Jerry to buy a car from the dealership from Wayne's boyfriend Putty, played by what's his name? Patrick Warburton. He's also a voice actor. His other shows, like he was in The Venture Brothers. He's trying to buy a Twix bar from the machine, to hold him over, and he doesn't get stuck in there, and then he goes to, tell the people at the, dealership that's stuck in there, and the mechanic ends up taking the Twix, and it really enraged him. He said, "Hey, that's my Twix bar in there. It's a Fifth Avenue. Please, I think I've reached a point in my life where I can tell everything. Do it and cookies. So what's not these things that are just obvious fabrications?" And I may have, anyway, at some point in the episode he said that, and then the guy, said, we got a little vein there. He said, "I know about the vein. I hate this guy." The whole episode he's plotting this whole thing to get back at the mechanic. He even goes out and buys all these Twix bars. He does kind of a sting thing where he buys all these Twix and he puts them in a kind of a presentation. And he goes in there, the candy lineup, that's what he called it. He goes in there and he finds they're all eating his candy bars, and he said, "The Twix they're all over the floor. You!" Talking to the mechanic, "How many Twix bars that makes you?" They're like, "Big Twix." And he said no, and George said, "Give me one." One of the guys there said, "Hey, this Clark bar is good." George said, "The Twix, they're all Twix. It was a setup, I tell you." "Well, screws me again. Now give me one, give me a Twix." And the mechanic says, "They're all gone." And George's like, "Twix!" somehow they actually got an aerial shot. I don't know how they did it before like drones existed. They got a really good aerial shot of him saying that. And Putty said, or Jerry said, "What was that?" And Putty said, "There's a mental hospital right near here." Okay, the next one is Kramer, Michael Richards, or I forgot. Jerry's, of course, Jerry Seinfeld. George is Jason Alexander. Kramer's Michael Richards. Kramer is certainly one of the best sitcom characters ever created. You know, he has this famous thing where he slides into Jerry's apartment. He just comes in without knocking or anything, just barges in. You know, he's always freeloading off of Jerry's food, and you know, he's always encouraging Jerry to go through all these schemes like mail fraud, and like if Jerry gets busted, you know, he's you know he's like basically SOL attitude. Like this episode where Jerry took Kramer's advice, you know, basically well, he didn't fully take, like he was hesitant at first, and Kramer ends up smashing the stereo when Jerry didn't know, and he sent it into to the post office, you know, acting like it got damaged during shipment, and he purchased insurance on it. You know, he smashed it up and then tried to send it in for, you know, to get money, an old stereo that Jerry's had for a while. And Newman, you know, Newman always looking for a way to bust Jerry, you know, get back at Jerry. You know, he heads the investigation. Kramer, you know, there with Jerry because Jerry got called into the post office, and you know, a case has been flagged. You're being investigated for mail fraud, and Kramer says, "Uh-oh, looks like you're in a lot of trouble, buddy." Basically, you know, because Kramer, you know, one of his schemes again. You know, Jerry got into trouble, and he's like, "Oh well," and of course Kramer, like he has this persona of like one episode was H.E. Pennypacker, and then he was Dr. Von Nostrand. That was the same episode with the boombox. The boombox incident episode. He was pretending to be a dermatologist so that he can get a picture of Kruger, you know, without a shirt on for the picture on the beach, you know, to replace the cartoon drawing. And he has some catchphrases like "Giddy up" and "Yeah." And then let's see. Then you have Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who plays Elaine on the show. She, you know, female character of the show. It's kind of a shallow, it kind of plays a shallow chick in the show. You know, a bit of a, what's the word? You know, she's a bit surly on the show. Like she has kind of a doesn't take crap from anyone kind of attitude, and you know, like the other characters in the show, she's always looking for ways to benefit herself, even if it, you know, means trampling other people. And she has several dates in the show. Like one of her main ones was off and on boyfriend with David Putty, you know, played by Patrick Warburton, who he's a bit of a doofus, a dimwit on the show. Like he answers the phone, "This is Putty." You know, he's always got kind of a blank expression on his face, and you know, he engages in these rudimentary, like Elaine, all of them, Jerry, they consider it rudimentary, the high fives, and you know, he wears face paint at games, like he considers it beneath her, and you know, his whole thing was he was always taking her to Arby's. She was tired of always going out to Arby's, and anyway, you know, like Elaine has this famous thing where she pushes, like when they say something that she's excited, she says, "Get out!" And, you know, she pushes them. One episode, another really good episode, it's a late series episode, it's called The Bizarro Jerry. She's dating a guy who's like the bizarro version of Jerry, and he has his own friends that are bizarro versions of George, Kramer, and even Newman. I think they live in the same complex. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, he had a similar apartment to Jerry. It's like reverse version. It's like really nice and clean, and you know, it's a reverse floor plan. The kitchen is on the left instead of the right. The bedrooms are on the right instead of the left. You know, instead of all the cereals that Jerry has, you know, can't remember the guy's name exactly, but basically he's like the opposite of Jerry. He had a bunch of cereal. He locks his door. He doesn't just leave it open like Jerry does. So anyway, he's dating this guy, and they end up breaking up because she doesn't really like. She's used to kind of like how it is with Jerry. She just barge in there and just take whatever she wants out of the fridge. Jerry doesn't really care. Like he was bewildered. Like, what are you doing? So I'm just getting some. You ever heard of asking? And then like she was trying to leave. One thing went to another, and she ended up having to leave. Ended up being an awkward situation. She's trying to leave. She can't get out of this. Like she doesn't realize it's unlocked. And at the end of the episode, all these the opposites versions of George and Kramer, even Newman, come in. Like the opposite version of Kramer. I can't remember what they call him on they call him the episode. Anyway, he comes in, he knocks everything. He does, he asks if he takes stuff out of the fridge. The opposite of Kramer. And then Gene, I remember his name. Gene was the opposite of George. Like George is always looking for ways, like the phone at work. Like there was a payphone that. Well, back in the 90s, there was a payphone that he could get free calls on. He definitely would take full advantage of it. Gene actually took the time to report it, the office, instead of just utilizing it to his own benefit. And then new Feldspar comes in, said the whole thing where Jerry says, he says, "Hello, Jerry." And Jerry says, "Hello, Newman." It's like they're buddies, they're all best friends. Anyway, that leads me to the next character, Newman, played by Wayne Knight. Also one of the best characters. He's lazy postman. He is overweight. He like in the show he's always eating, and he has this kind of rivalry with Jerry. It's like explaining the show, they don't even know why they have the rivalry. It's they don't really understand it. Like he always comes over, he says, "Hello, Jerry." And Jerry says, "Hello, Newman." Usually, I mean sometimes he doesn't, but usually he has a falsely jovial attitude about it. And he's always looking for ways, to get back at Jerry, like the whole post office thing. He was, much to his delight, he was able to bust Jerry. Like he was interrogating Jerry, he's under the lamp, he said, "It's kind of pretty hot under these lights, isn't it, Seinfeld?" Jerry's over at the other side, or it's cool, he said, "Actually, I'm quite comfortable." Newman's looking at the drink, and he's like, "Can I have a sip?" And Jerry says, "No." Newman, "Not gonna play ball, huh?" It's a minute, you smashed the stereo, committed mail fraud. "I didn't do anything, I didn't even sign for it." And he looks at the paper, he said, it's Jerry's Uncle Leo, he signed for it, and he said, "Uncle Leo?" He said, this case is pending in lieu of in future further evidence." And then he's a postman, but he's like really lazy. Like there's like he even keeps all his mail at one point in a lockup. Jerry's he ends up putting it in. Kramer is sharing Jerry's storage garage. And Kramer ended up putting tons of his mail in there, and Jerry couldn't get into it. So Newman was trying to get this promotion to be a postman in Hawaii, and but he had to deliver a certain amount of mail that he's been accumulating, and Jerry ended up taking over for him. Jerry got it all done, and anyway, he didn't get promotion because, according to Newman, no postman's ever cracked the 50% barrier. You're a disgrace to the uniform. And he rips off the name, and Jerry said, "It's your jacket." And he said, "Damn." And there was an episode where he brought fleas into the apartment complex, and Jerry and all, they were trying to figure out who it was, and he finds these chunky wrappers, and he says, Newman, I knew it. He's the only chunky around, and he said to them, "You're the only chunky around who eats chunkies." And there's another episode where I don't remember which one it was. He was dating a woman, and he was in the car with him, and he said to her, "Here's the thing about zip codes. They're meaningless." Yeah, he has that kind of laugh. He's always doing that laugh, like when he's able to get make Jerry's life miserable. And there's another couple ones, like one episode where he and Kramer teamed up to do a scheme where they're trying to get the 10-cent bottle deposit from Michigan. They do 10 cents for CRV, so they went out of state to do it, and they load up the mail truck with it. And, he and Kramer are going around, they're taking all these bottles, even taking it from homeless people. They loaded up, they go to Michigan, but they weren't able to keep going because they were over the weight capacity. So Kramer said to Newman, "Hey Newman, is that a pie stand back there?" Where he kicks him out of the truck. And another one where Newman was the cleaner, the Muffin Top episode, Elaine, I don't remember who she opened it up with. Exactly who she opened it up with. I think it was Mr. Pitt. Or was it, wait, not Mr. Pitt, Ian, I can't remember. I think he's played by Ian Abercrombie. I can't remember the guy's name exactly. One of her bosses. He and Elaine opened up this muffin top business, but it's basically just a muffin top. They get rid of the stumps, what they call them. They give it to the homeless shelter, and the head of the homeless shelter, Rebecca De Mornay, she was upset. She was upset because almost homeless people were complaining about where's the top of the muffins. So anyway, they were all stuck with these muffins at the shop, and they call in Newman, called in the cleaner. Newman pulls up in a rental of this Lamborghini. He said, "I understand you have a situation. Time is of the essence. I apologize if I'm curt. Time is of the essence." And he said, I'm gonna need a clean 8-ounce glass." He goes to the back, where the muffins are, and he pulls out this bag that he had, pulls out milk, and he has to eat all these muffins. Get rid of them, get rid of the muffin stump problem. And then you have some of the side characters in the show, like there's Steinbrenner. Larry David plays him. He's funny. He's a bit clueless. He's not as much as Kruger, but he's a bit clueless himself. He's a bit of eccentric. He oblivious. To George's buffoonery. His laziness at work. Like the episode where George had the underneath part of his desk turned into a bunk. Steinbrenner was in there. Like George was sleeping. He didn't know Steinbrenner came to his office, and he was stuck under the desk. He had Jerry calling the bomb threat. And Steinbrenner says, "Oh my God, there's a bomb in the building! Everyone on the desk!" And you find George under there. Instead of catching on to George's whole scheme of sleeping under the desk, at work, he thinks George was on to the whole bomb thing, and he ends up after the whole bomb scare thing ends up being open like death. The whole thing fell apart. The whole scheme was, after this one time, it was gone. It was done. Let's see. Then you have George's parents, Frank and Estelle. Estelle's the overbearing mother, and Frank, he's also a cheapskate like George. He's really cantankerous. He's grumpy all the time. He invented his own holiday. Like he was disillusioned with Christmas, so he invented a holiday called Festivus. He has a Festivus pole with tinsel. He says, "Festivus, the holiday for the rest of us." George has kind of a sociopathic nature. Probably ties a lot from his parents. His parents were really, he had a rough childhood with his parents, especially with his father. His father was always yelling at him, and all that kind of stuff, and it was traumatic for him. And then what else you got? You have like Elaine's bosses, like Mr. Pitts and Mr. Abercrombie. I can't remember his name, but I know he's played by Ian Abercrombie. Like a couple of the bosses she had, and then like Mr. Kruger. What else? Putty, like I mentioned. And I have like Jerry's girlfriends on the show, like Man Hands and Two-Faced Woman. the woman he thought had implants but didn't. Her breasts were just too perfect. And then like some of the famous actresses, like one of the one with the breasts was Terry Hatcher, and Kirstie Alley I think was one of them. Like all these different famous women. Like I think he had like 73 girlfriends in the show. Like he had more girlfriends than James Bond did across like 25 movies. Like he had a new girlfriend like pretty much every week. He had quite a bit of girlfriends. It's usually I always broke up them because it's usually some silly reason like the Manhunt thing or the Two-Face. Like there's always something insubstantial that he focused on. He ended up breaking up with them. Or sometimes they broke up with him, but usually it's like something he focused too much on something so silly, and that was the reason they broke up. It's like same with George. George was always having trouble with women as well. Like like he did almost get married to the woman Susan, like Susan Ross, but before he could even get married, she died because of his cheapness. He bought those really cheap envelopes and all the card stock, and it killed her. And it led to her family. They thought it was because of him, so they were investigating it. They kept having these meetings about her, so they were hoping to bust him for it. And then, yeah. Anyway, I know it's kind of a long review, but I mean, I think it touched a good amount of the show. Like the show has oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention the show takes a couple seasons. Took a couple seasons to get going, especially by season. I think, like when the show gets like the first season, I don't think it had Elaine yet. It didn't have Julie Louis-Dreyfus, so it got really good when she joined, and also when Wayne Knight joined. It was. I mean, it wasn't every episode he was in, but he started joining as a recurring character. That's when it really took off, like by season 2. And then when the show really started to get going further was the episode called The Contest, where they're having a contest of how long they could hold out without having, masturbating. And they don't ever say it on the show, but, it's hinted that's what they're having a contest about. And they call it the master of your domain. So anyway, I give the show, give it about like a 9 out of 10. It did take a season for it to get going, and I mean, sometimes it turns people off because they watch it, and the beginning of the show was kind of slow, especially the pilot was kind of not really represented the rest of the show. I mean, the pilot was a bit rough. I mean, once you start to get past the first season, it really starts to get better and better. And then the last couple seasons, I mean, I happen to like them, but there are a lot of people who didn't really like them, like because Larry David left the show, and he came back for the finale, but for the last couple seasons he wasn't there, and the writing was different in the earlier seasons, but I still thought it was pretty funny. Like it had, like Bizarre Jerry was one of the later episodes. That one's hilarious. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention another reason I liked the episodes. Kramer pretended to work at Brand. Oh man, that was great. He inadvertently gets a job there because like he went to use the restroom there because they had a really good toilet, and like these guys were coming by, and one of them asked, like they're having trouble. One of them was having trouble with the copier, and he comes over. He says, kind of pounds it around, get it working, and they call him in for. They said they're about to have a meeting. They thought he worked there, and one thing led to another, and he gets a job working there. And when Jerry first found out, Jerry was completely bewildered. Like he was making breakfast and all, like around 8:00 in the morning. Jerry said, "Kramer, it's 8:00 in the morning. What the hell is going on?" Kramer said, "I gotta be at Brant Leland by 8." And Jerry said, "Why?" "Because I work there now." And he said, "How long have I been asleep? What year is it?" And he's completely bewildered about why he's working, what's going on with Kramer, famous for being a moocher, not ever holding a job. Suddenly he's working at Brant Leland, a high profile job, in finances, like a 9-to-5 job, really intensive job, and he's suddenly working there. So anyway, I mean, you can pretty much find the show almost anywhere. Like you could find it on Netflix. I don't know if it's on Hulu, so it was on Hulu. DVD, you can buy on iTunes. DVDs are pretty good for the show. I recommend. It still has pretty good quality. The only thing, it's not in full screen. It's um, the aspect ratio is made for those older CRT TVs, so it's not full screen. But the film quality for it is actually pretty good. They did a pretty good job, and even though they're on sets, the sets look very convincing. It was it's all filmed in Los Angeles for the most part, except the occasional scenes. But yeah, I mean, they made it look like New York. So anyway, yeah, I recommend the show if you like ensemble comedies, deadpan humor, dry humor, observational comedy, quirky characters, smart writing. So anyway, I hope you like the review and check out my channel videos. I'll see you all soon.